So, welcome to Insights by Zarity, the series where we speak to experts about topics concerning everyday health. I'm Abhimanyu Chauhan, CEO and co founder at Zarity Health, and the host of this episode. My aim from these conversations, if you have been following this, is to get practical takeaways, insights that people like you and me can start implementing from today. And if you haven't already, check out the previous conversations where we discuss a lot about kitchen essentials, salt, sugar, and oil. We discuss health supplements, health checkups, and more. In this episode, we're discussing the basics of fasting, where we try to understand if this is the right choice for you. Today, I'm in conversation with Majida Khan. In the past, she has worked with health tech platforms and St. John's Research Institute, Bangalore. Currently, she's a clinical nutritionist here at Zarity, where she advises through consultations and health programs. So let me get started. I want to understand from scratch, what is the history of fasting? Where did it all get started?
So, fasting is a very common term. It is nothing new to us. And it is an ancient procedure that takes us back to about 1500 years ago. And I'll
Wow.
tell you how exactly it started 1500 years ago. All
Hmm.
right. Have you heard of this phrase, feed a cold, starve a fever? So, the basic idea behind this saying was that eating food activated your digestive system. So, in your fever, you have a high temperature, right? And when you activate your digestive system, your body temperature also increases. So, to avoid the temperature from increasing, you were asked to fast. So, that would help bring the body temperature down, right? Whereas when you get a cold, if you eat something and it activates your digestive system, your body temperature rises. So, that's how this entire phrase came into existence: feed a cold, starve a fever. It was also used for fever and for conditions because of which your body temperature would increase. It worked for some conditions, it did not for others. So, this is how fasting came into play.
So, how true is it scientifically speaking that you fast in fever and your fever goes away?
So, like I mentioned, it worked for some conditions, it did not work for others. Fever is one among those. So, the latest research recommends against starving during fever. The simple explanation is when your body is fighting an infection, that's when the temperature goes high, right? And if you don't feed your body with food, how is it going to get the energy to fight this infection off?
So that
So,
that clearly is not making sense today as far as the research is telling us.
yes, that is for fever. But there are other benefits of fasting. If you have a mindful eating, you consume sufficient nutrients, you don't overload your body with a lot of food, hydrate yourself, that itself is going to be beneficial for good health.
Okay, tell me about the different types of fasting. Clearly, I know about three broad categories. There is one religious fasting, which people, India is a diverse country. Many religions practice fasting, and it's embedded in our culture, many cultures, right? And then I hear about intermittent fasting. Plus, there are also fasting practiced for some specific. So, can you shed more light on this?
You rightly said intermittent fasting, and it is trending so much that you see a lot of celebrities who vouch for this kind of lifestyle fasting. For example, Alia Bhatt. I like her. She says that she's followed 618 method of intermittent fasting, which means that she's fasted for 16 hours in a day, and the rest of the 8 hours she would consume food normally, right? And she says that she has lost about 16 kilos in 3 months because of this kind of fasting. Also, you must have heard of this comedian called Bharti Singh. And her weight loss journey is also something that a lot of people look up to. So she said that she lost about 15 kilos in 7 months. And she also mentioned in one of her interviews that her first meal of the day was at 12 p.m. and the last meal would be at 7 p.m. And after that, she would fast. And that yielded these weight loss benefits for her. Based on these celebrities' choices, it seems like the way to go. But there are certain nuances that one needs to be extremely careful about before considering intermittent fasting as a viable choice.
But then you speak 15 kgs in about 7 months. That's roughly around 2 kgs per month. Isn't that the healthy weight loss goal for an individual, which mostly nutritionists or other experts recommend you doing? So, how is fasting playing a specific role in that case?
So, there are different ways to go about this. Firstly, when you say, how is fasting helping with weight loss? Right. So, we know that there are different functions in our body. And for performing all these functions, the body requires energy. For example, the heart needs energy to pump blood, the lungs need energy to breathe, and then the muscles need energy to pick up things, to do different kinds of activities. And above all, the brain also needs energy to make all these functions fall into place. And this energy comes from the food we eat. So once the body gets energy, or rather calories, it uses these calories as much as it needs to perform these basic functions. The rest of these calories is stored as fat in the body. So either it can be stored in the liver as glycogen to use it whenever you're not eating. And apart from this, the excess is stored as fat, say in your abdomen, on your thighs or your arms, and all these other places. So once the body starts using the liver for energy and that's over, then the body starts targeting the fat stores in your body. And that is the entire science behind fasting or intermittent fasting, as you would like to say it.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is that when you fast, you don't store that extra fat in your body. So you're basically getting more energy out of the food that you're eating, and you don't force your body to store reserves. Is what basically is the fundamental of fasting.
So basically, when you fast, you at least go without food for say 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 or 14, 16, as many hours as your nutritionist would have recommended you to go for. So in this period, the energy that the body gets for performing all these important functions is from the fat that is stored in your body. This way you lose fat.
This is for somebody who has extra weight or fat on them, and for them, this works in that fashion.
Exactly. So this is how we start losing fat, and the science behind this, or the scientific term behind this, is ketogenesis. So if you are somebody who has an extremely high BMI, so for example, in many of these Indian studies that say intermittent fasting is good for weight loss, they will always take people who have a higher BMI of more than say 23 or 25, and it has worked tremendously for these kind of people.
Got it. So basically, you're tying up fasting with weight loss, where you try the method basically reduces the fat storage from your body, where your body is trying to extract energy from the fat that's stored. So apart from weight loss, what are the other benefits of fasting for somebody who doesn't look at at weight loss as their goal?
So you'll find many articles that support the practice of fasting and the benefits that come with it. For example, there are multiple studies that recommend fasting for reducing your cholesterol and triglycerides. We just discussed that these excess calories or the excess carbohydrates in your diet are stored as fat, and they are stored in the form of triglycerides. So whenever you go for your blood test and you go for your lipid profile, you must have seen cholesterol, low LDL, HDL, triglycerides, right? So the triglycerides, LDL, cholesterol, these are all bad fat in your body. So it helps in reducing these fats, and it helps in increasing the good cholesterol also in your body. This is one way where you can fast to improve your cholesterol levels. And there are also studies that suggest fasting helps in reducing blood pressure. Apart from heart health, there are again multiple studies that suggest if you go for intermittent fasting, that is, if you fast for 18 hours per day for 5 weeks, you can improve your HbA1c levels. If you are pre diabetic, you can reverse this condition. And again, while these studies exist, we need to understand that these people were always on strict supervision by the researchers, the doctors, and the nutritionists. So if you're on medications or you have any medical conditions, you are not recommended to fast unless suggested by your doctor.
But this is very surprising because diabetes, I have somebody in my family who has type 2 diabetes. And for them, fasting was something that was increasing glucose levels in their body, right? So they were strictly advised not to fast or be without food for more than 2 to 3 hours, so that the glucose spikes don't happen in their body. And what you're highlighting is, I think it's very specific. It's only done under supervision, what you're trying to recommend, right?
Correct, which is why even people who do not have any comorbidities or any medical conditions, even if you're not on any medications, it is not advisable to go for fasting without getting a professional guidance or an expert's opinion about this, because you never know if fasting is the right way for you to lose weight. And like you mentioned, there is fasting. Also, people restrict calories. You eat normally throughout the day, but you restrict calories. And you also said that you lose 2 kgs in a month, which is exactly what we are targeting even when we do calorie restriction. Either fasting might be a better option for you to lose weight, or calorie restriction might be the best option for you. And to decide this, you need to get an expert's opinion or the opinion of your doctor first.
In the previous conversation that I had with Dvija, we were discussing about health supplements. She mentioned nutrition gaps. As it is during the day, we are getting less of nutrients, right? And if I'm restricting, if I'm fasting, I'm reducing the number of meals I'm taking in a day for an average. So I'm increasing the nutrition gaps in my food further because now I have lesser meals and I want to incorporate more nutrients in the body, right? The second thing is, how do I know that I have extra fat in my body if I get a analysis done?
Right. So for diabetes, like I mentioned, it is ideal not to go for fasting. Because if you just search on Google intermittent fasting for diabetic people, you will find multiple studies, multiple magazine articles that say that, okay, I did intermittent fasting, I reversed my diabetes, my HbA1c is normal, and I don't have any problems. My blood sugar levels are normal. There was no drop, there was no spike. But it comes back to the very famous saying that not one size fits all. While it may work for somebody, it may be really detrimental for others. If you're somebody watching this, or if you're interested in intermittent fasting and you're diabetic, I wouldn't suggest to right away go and start fasting. Always get an opinion from your doctor or your nutritionist and then figure out if it's the right way. Because these people who were involved in the studies with these diabetic people who wanted to lose weight or who wanted to correct their blood sugar or their HbA1c levels, firstly, they were in the initial stages of diabetes. Secondly, they were not on any medication. And the most important of all, like you rightly suggested, they were under strict supervision. So, unless these three things are not in place, you are not recommended to fast.
Got it. So there is almost not a magical way to reduce weight. There is not a magical way to reduce the HbA1c levels or sugar levels in your body. So you speak about be careful aspects of fasting. Where can I go wrong if I start practicing fasting?
Right. The problem arises when people are not aware of how to go about fasting the right way, right? It's a reason why fast and feast goes together. There's just a difference of a letter in these two words. So what people tend to do most times is they overeat during their non-fasting day or their non-fasting hours. And this is because one, you are new to fasting. So the thought of not eating for say 10 hours or 12 hours might be scary. And because of this reason, you may eat anything and everything that you see, even if it is unhealthy. And just the notion that, Acha, okay, anyway, I'm going to fast, I am going to lose weight, doesn't matter what I eat, leads to excessive consumption of even junk food. So you might have, say, two burgers at once, or some fried chicken, or chole kulche, biryani, all these things. And eventually, what is going to happen is you are going to burn fat during the fasting hours. But during the non fasting hours, the excess calories that you take is also going to turn into fat. So
Right.
you are losing
Counterintuitive.
fat.
Yeah.
Correct. So you're not going to reap any benefits out of this. So, for example, I'll just give you a very simple example. Imagine it's a Sunday afternoon and you eat 2 to 3 plates of biryani. What's the next thing that you'd want to do?
I would sleep through the afternoon. It's a Sunday, right? And three two
Exactly.
biryanis down and sleep.
Exactly. So there's no physical activity to burn this excessive calorie intake, right? So eventually there's going to be more fat in your body. And instead of benefiting from fasting, we're just left with laziness, bloating, or just digestive issues.
Okay. Interesting you mentioned digestive issues. I know a lot of people who have gut health problems and they feel that they've had a lot of outside food in the last month and they resort to this unplanned fasting. Okay. They give up a lot of things, eat less, eat simple food. While eating simple food, home cooked food is good, is what I hear. But can fasting really solve digestive problems? Can it solve problems like bloating? How true is that?
Not bloating. So fasting can definitely heal your gut and or your digestive system, right? And the problem these days is we eat a lot of food and we eat frequently. This creates additional stress on the digestive system to digest this much food. I'll give you a very simple example. Say 9 o'clock is our breakfast time, right? And then 12 or 1 is the lunch time. 8 or 9 is the dinner time. So we have these timings fixed. Regardless if one meal was heavy or light, we always resort to these timings to have our meals, right? For example, you had a very heavy breakfast. By 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, you're not hungry at all. But still, you're forced to eat because it is lunchtime and then you'll have to get back to the other work, right? So you're not giving your body enough time for the food to get digested that you had for breakfast. So this is how we are eating very frequently. So yes, so if you do leave some gap in your entire day or some window in your entire day where you're restricting eating or you're consuming meals mindfully, you take smaller portions, the gut is also in good health. Coming to bloating, there are better ways to treat bloating. For example, if you feel bloated in the afternoon or late afternoon, think about what you had for lunch or maybe right before lunch. And then you could figure out why you felt bloated. For some people, eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables, say cabbage or broccoli or cauliflower, or sometimes eating a lot of dal also might cause bloating. If you eat a lot of fatty foods like junk foods or food that have a lot of sugar and maida in it, it can cause bloating. Another interesting fact is even stress can trigger bloating. It is better to identify the cause and then work towards treating it because sometimes fasting can aggravate bloating and other digestive issues like acidity.
So what you're recommending is smaller portions, more frequency. But what you highlight is that if you subject your gut or your stomach to frequent rounds of more portion of food, it's not going to help your health. That's where the
Exactly.
digestive issues start. So smaller portions and but then separated, or the frequency has to be matched in that sense, right? And then again, we're talking about folks who are healthier. For people who have diabetes, they should really talk to the doctor before resorting to any of these things. I want to just go deep into what can go wrong with fasting. Because a lot of people are fasting, it's everywhere. It's so easy to do. Then you don't need a tool, you don't need a machine. All you need to do is not have food, and you can decide it at home without an expert. So, what can go wrong in such situations? I want to go deep into that.
Okay, so we'll dive deep into it. And there are 5 things that can go wrong. Okay. Firstly, it can make you sick in the beginning. For example, you may experience headache, tiredness, crankiness, and constipation as well.
Like a
Uh, s-
withdrawal or something.
exactly. So there was a study that was conducted this year itself, and about 147 participants practiced intermittent fasting for at least 1 month. And if you see, they did experience weight loss, which is good. But about 61% of them complained of headaches. There were 68% of them who complained of tiredness. And more than half of them had mood swings or dizziness.
Yeah, sorry, this also happens with me. So I would want to understand more about this. If you fast, like I'm not practicing fasting or anything, but if I miss out on a food, if I'm traveling, if I'm not, yeah, if I don't get access to food soon and it's my lunchtime, I have these minor headaches, right, that I get. Can you elaborate what is that? What is the cause for these headaches?
Yeah, so basically your body it needs energy to perform these functions. Sometimes if you notice, and even I get these headaches, a lot of heat, not eating for a very long period of time does give me headaches and dizziness. So at that time, what you can do is have a snack that can give you immediate energy. So
Right.
I usually have like chocolate or something, not recommending it for everybody. Something like an immediate source of energy, or say some nuts, something like that
Like a
to sort of
banana or nuts or
correct.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, like a banana or nuts or something, so that you have that glucose in your body and your brain can use this glucose. Which is why when you're doing intermittent fasting or any sort of fasting, there is a fasting window and there is a eating window. So during a fasting window, you can consume water or beverages that do not have a lot of calories. Say, for example, you have unsweetened tea and unsweetened coffee, again without milk. Or what you can do is you could use infused water. So chop some fruits or vegetables, put them in your water and consume for your entire fasting. So don't stay without water. You need to hydrate your body. That is extremely important,
Got it.
right?
Yes, coming
Uh,
back to the study that you mentioned where people had headaches, dizziness, mood swings, what are the
right.
other impacts there? Yeah.
So, this is one thing that people who are new to fasting might experience. Secondly, we discussed overeating. So, after your fasting period, your appetite and your hunger is at another level. So, overeating or including unhealthy foods are also high. The chances of these things happening is high. And we have this tendency to reward ourselves. Remember, we were discussing this when we were talking about sugar, that how addictive sugar can get. And if you want to reward yourself, you immediately think about sweets and chocolates. So the tendency to go for sweet items after a fast is also high. So all these things put together might add up to your weight. That's two. Coming to the third point, it might cause too much weight loss. That's because all these studies about fasting and intermittent fasting and weight loss were conducted on people who were either young or of middle age. And there aren't a lot of studies to confirm that fasting is absolutely safe for older adults. So for them, it may lead to excessive weight loss, eventually affecting their immune system and their overall energy levels. The fourth point is, again, if you're taking any medications, or if you're somebody who has medicines for nausea or repeated stomach irritation, you have antacids, you shouldn't be fasting without an expert's opinion. Again, I'll give you a simple example. People who are hypertensive and they're on medications, right? So if you severely restrict calories for these people, or if these people undergo fasting, there might be imbalances in your sodium, potassium, and other minerals as well, which can be extremely dangerous for your body, right? And coming to the fifth point, which we were already discussing about, and you rightly mentioned that your calorie intake reduces. So how much food you're eating during your eating window is less. So that might lead to certain deficiencies. So micronutrient deficiencies like iron, vitamin B12, all these things might happen if you do not have somebody who is guiding you throughout the fasting process.
Okay, so one that you should think about fasting when you are in a healthy state of body and mind, because it has this impact. Second, you should always look at all of these factors. There is nutrient deficiencies, there are acidity problems, there are gut health issues that could hinder your way into fasting. So don't just go ahead and believe anybody out there on the internet saying that try out fasting. So recommend an expert. But based on all of this, when do you think, if at all, does it make sense for somebody to fast, or is it really recommended for people to fast?
Right. So if you're somebody who is purely looking to lose weight and shed that extra fat, you can go ahead with fasting. And there are different types of fasting that can be followed. So you can pick anything that is the most convenient with you. Or if you're somebody who likes to snack late at night, you can try fasting to control yourself from binging on junk foods. But again, I keep repeating myself, because there are a lot of people out there who would just listen to this, that okay, fasting is good for weight loss, and immediately go for weight loss without thinking about the consequences and the side effects that they might have to face. Right. So again, it is extremely important that you do all of this under supervision. Also, if you have comorbidities like diabetes or heart issues, it is wise to seek professional guidance before you decide to fast, be it for medical or for religious reasons.
Majita, interestingly, you mentioned keto diet, I think, right? In one of the questions. I want to double click on that in the next segment that we go to. And then, interestingly, I see a theme here, okay? Fasting mostly is done by people who are practicing it for health reasons for two purposes. Either they are looking to improve or restore their gut health, or the majority of them are specifically looking at it for weight loss. And now, answer me this, that a healthy weight loss is around 2.2 to 2.5 kgs, right? If I'm not mistaken. And when you speak about fasting, and if you're just fasting, the celebrity that you mentioned, she lost around 2 kgs in a month. That's again a healthy weight loss, right? Do you believe that people like these are practicing this along with balancing the nutrient deficiencies? Or when somebody comes to you for weight loss, would you recommend them to fast and balance their diet? How does it go with that?
Okay, so let's just break this into something that's extremely simple. While you were asking this question, two things popped up. One is fasting and one is calorie restriction, right? Both of them have somewhat the same way of losing weight, or the same rate at which you lose weight, right? So the major difference between intermittent fasting and calorie restriction is that one focuses on the time restricted eating, which means that you restrict eating only to a specific time of the day. Whereas in calorie restriction, you can eat throughout the day, but your calories are restricted, right? So here's the catch. By following intermittent fasting, you're also restricting your calorie intake. In that way, it is a little similar. So, for example, in your entire day, you're taking about 1,500 calories. Maybe when you're fasting, you're supposed to take, say, 1,000 or 900 calories, right? But if you're somebody who takes about 1,600 calories when you're fasting, and not fasting, you're taking 1,500, then there's no benefit of fasting, right?
So
So,
calorie deficit is what causes the weight loss in the simpler terms, right?
exactly. Another major difference between these two is that the stored fat in your body becomes the major source of energy during fasting period, right? Again, like we discussed, this is a process called ketogenesis. And this way, people who have a higher BMI or a higher fat percentage in their body might benefit more than those people who have close to normal BMI or who don't have a lot of fat stores in their body. The outcome of these two is the same. It is extremely helpful in improving your health parameters, your weight loss, your fat levels. It helps in getting all these things down. The choice entirely depends on what you are comfortable with, provided you've consulted with your doctor or your nutritionist in this regard.
Understood. So I want to sum this up now, and I want to really stress on this again that when would you not recommend fasting to people?
We will talk about 8 different conditions over here. Firstly, starting with something that I've been repeating myself, I think, quite a lot, which is medical conditions, right? So, if you are hypertensive or diabetes, please do not undergo fasting without the guidance of a doctor and a nutritionist. You might find multiple studies out there, multiple articles, or you might find a lot of people who recommend you to go for fasting knowing that you're diabetic. But please don't listen to that right away. Always seek the guidance of a professional and then decide what to do based on their suggestion, right? That's because if you're a diabetic, then you might experience a lot of fluctuations in your blood sugar levels. Also, if you're on insulin shots, it may lead to something very dangerous as low blood sugar levels, which might lead to hypoglycemic seizures. And these are all something that was very difficult to deal with. So rather not delve into fasting and invite all these troubles into your life, right? So that's one, that's medical conditions. Another condition is gout or kidney stones. You must have heard about gout. It's almost very common these days. It's when the uric acid levels in your eye go extremely to a very high level. And that might lead to inflammation in your joints or, say, your fingers or your toes or your knees, right? So, if you have these conditions, the symptoms of these conditions might get severe if you fast. It might increase your back pain with kidney stones or pain in your extremities if you have gout. After that, the fourth category are those who are pregnant or lactating. So, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, please do not follow any crash diets or fasting to lose weight. This is the time when you need adequate nutrition, not just for yourself, but for your baby as well. So, always consult your doctor and your nutritionist about how to lose weight post delivery. Then the fifth condition, again, those people who have eating disorders, right, like anorexia or bulimia, these people are not recommended to fast. Again, talking along the same lines, if you're underweight, please avoid fasting as this might lead to extreme weakness and fatigue. Also, children. So, we have come across multiple studies that say that children these days are extremely obese and they are developing type 2 diabetes as well. But for these children as well, please do not put them through something that's extremely difficult as fasting. And it is a contraindication for children and adolescents because they do need higher amount of nutrients than adults for proper growth and development. So if you put them through fasting, most likely they are not going to meet their micronutrient needs, like for example, calcium and iron. So that might lead to further issues in their life. And lastly, like we were discussing, gastritis, right? So if you're somebody who experiences continuous discomfort while fasting, like nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, acidity, and even belching, then it is ideal to discontinue fasting. Instead, you could consume smaller portions of your meals at frequent intervals. Yeah, these are the 8 categories of people who are not recommended to fast.
When you speak about underweight and overweight, right? I think BMI is the way to understand that. Can you shed more light about how to go about knowing whether you're underweight, overweight, or perfect weight?
Yes, there is BMI, which is widely used in a lot of hospitals these days. There are different ways to go about finding your BMI. You can just put it on Google and that can give you your BMI. So, WHO has separate guidelines for the different stages or the different categories in BMI. But for the Indian population, we take the limit to be 23 because Indians, we are known to consume a lot of carbohydrates. So, your BMI may fall under normal if you follow the WHO brackets, but you may have a higher body fat percentage. So, which is why the BMI for the Indian population has been cut off to 23, right? But again, there are a lot of studies that are going on right now that suggest BMI might not be the ideal way to determine if you are fat or if there's a lot of fat in your body, which is why you could go for alternate methods like checking your waist circumference. So,
Hip to waist
again,
ratio.
correct, waist to hip
Right.
ratio.
Okay.
So you can again get in touch with your nutritionist who might be able to guide you properly as to how to check these body measurements, because again, it's something that's pretty long and we might need a lot of time for people to understand why waist circumference and hip circumference are better measures than checking your BMI.
Got it. All right, I think we have it. I want to double click in the next. In addition to this, I hope that this conversation helps people who are tuning in to understand whether fasting is the right choice for them or not. I think the simplest way I understood is that if your BMI is on the higher side, if you feel that you're overweight using the BMI score, and if you get a lab test done, you have consulted a doctor, and every other parameter is okay, I think fasting is the right choice for you, but recommended to speak to an expert who would guide you to do this in the right manner, right? In the next segment, where we discuss more about intermittent fasting and who is this right for and how to go about doing this for yourself, right? Thank you so much. We'll wrap this up here where we discuss it in the next segment then, Majida. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning in to Insights by Zarity Health. We hope you enjoyed today's talk and gained valuable insights. If you want to stay updated on our latest episodes, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram, wherever you are watching this at. Help us grow by sharing this with anybody you think might find this interesting. And when you need to, you can consult our doctors and nutritionists through our website, zarity.care. We are a telehealth clinic that focuses on chronic care. Our experts spend more time with you to find out the root cause of your symptoms and then treat it with medicine, nutrition, and behavioral changes. And last but not the least, if you have questions that you think we should ask the experts, don't forget to put them in comments. Thanks once again for tuning in.